2 weeks ago, Tom Cassie was arrested. He was arrested on Good Friday, April 18th, 2025. And today, May 2nd, 2025, 2 weeks later, he's still in jail. Welcome, everybody. I am here to update you on the Faith Life Church issue, ongoing saga, arrest, detainment of Tom Cassie, and also I want to talk about a new development in the Art Lucier and his church situation as well. So, all right, let's talk about Tom Cassie first. So as you guys know, he was arraigned on 18, 19, 20, 21, that Monday, April 21st, and then he had arraigned of 27 charges, felony charges. Then he had an arraignment and bond hearing 2 days later, which would have been April 23rd. That was a Wednesday. And at that time, he was given a $2 million bond, and there were other conditions, such as he had to fund the GPS monitor that he would have to wear in order to be released in accordance with the bond conditions that were set by the judge. Well, none of that has happened because he has not made that $2 million cash bond. So he sits in jail. Then this week, it is my understanding that there was a pretrial in the criminal court. And at that time, and I cannot confirm it because I've gone to the docket several times to see if there was an update. I have not seen one other than there was an entry on Wednesday. There was, I think, 2 entries on Wednesday, April 30th, indicating that the jury trial has now been scheduled for July 1st, 2025. That date took me back a bit because that is a very quick date for a trial. It is less than 2 months from today because today is May 2nd. Now, would the state be ready to go to trial? Yes, more likely than not. They would have to be. They have 3 witnesses, and then they have 27 charges to prove through their witnesses. Sorry, 3 victims. That doesn't mean that that's all the witnesses that they will have. But the victims are the ones that are alleging what happened to them, and that comprise the 27 counts. There will also be other witnesses that would corroborate their testimony. There could be other evidence. We've talked about that as well in my videos. And by the way, if you're new here, welcome. I am an attorney and I'm talking about Tom Cassie of Faith Life Church. And I will be talking about other issues in the church that are coming up, that pastors, families of pastors, people that are worked in church, mega ministries, what have you, that are being accused or alleged of certain things. And it could include SA. It could include spiritual abuse or even physical abuse, even wrongful termination. We've seen that there are possible allegations of that as well in regard to Faith Life Church, particularly when people, the whistleblowers, were working there, some of them, and they would bring concerns about Tom's activity or relationship with young females to the attention of Gary and Drenda or other family members, and they were essentially just brushed aside. So, and how that affected their employment there could be an issue. So if you have not already seen it, recently, Jake and Sabrina Warner on their Facebook page, they released some body cam footage of the actual arrest of Tom Cassie, which was 2 weeks ago. And I'm going to link that video here in a pinned comment as well as in the description box. So if you haven't seen it, you can watch that. It appears that what they did is they put together, I don't know who, but from the video, it looks like there's the vantage point of several sheriffs because it's not just through one lens. You can see different angles, so it's clear. He is arrested at his home. I was kind of surprised to see that they did utilize several sheriffs to make the arrest. They went to his home. They had a search warrant. They pulled him out of the house. I think he was at the door and they just pulled him out of that entryway. They made the arrest. There was a female that I saw quickly. I don't know who that was. I'm just assuming that's probably his wife. And there was it looked like the arrest was without incident. It just showed him getting cuffed. It didn't show him I didn't see it at least, getting put into a vehicle. And then obviously he was brought in and booked, and the rest is history. So that is where we are now. We know that there is a jury trial date. And people have asked me, do you think that it's going to go to trial that day? I don't think so. It could. There are cases where the defendant will invoke speedy trial, and that could happen. And I would suspect, I don't know for sure, I'm just speculating here, just based upon the evidence, the information that we have right now, that more likely than not, his attorney asked for that date, because the judge would make sure that that was cleared for all parties. So, and if the attorney, the defense attorney, Tom's attorney, asked for a quick date, he would have gotten it. And so that's probably why that's there. I don't know how discovery goes in Ohio, whether they're allowed to depose, that means take a deposition of a witness or a victim. Here in Florida, you can do that, even in a criminal trial. There's a lot of discovery that is allowed here in Florida. So if there is no discovery that is allowed there in that format of a deposition, then they're going to have to get their discovery, obviously the witness statements that were given and victim statements that were given to the police. They get it that way, and they have to get it through either the prosecutor or the sheriff's department. So stay tuned. This could change. There could be a request for a continuance on the jury trial, or they could actually go to trial on that date. I don't know. I suspect no. There was a subpoena issued for records from Faith Life Church. It would appear to me that this subpoena was issued in order to get records of Tom as an employee, but that's again a speculation. Perhaps they're getting records that could potentially corroborate any of the victims or witnesses statements. They could be subpoenaing information that it's to the records keeper. So the records keeper, it could be payroll records, it could be personnel file, it could be financial record, anything. We don't know. It was kind of vague. It was a subpoena for records from the records keeper at Faith Life Church. So we know that that was issued. So another thing that came up this week that was very interesting, and I saw on Facebook, were those little bands that kids will wear, and back in the day there was the "What Would Jesus Do?" You saw that on those bands that you would wear on your wrist. Apparently, and this comes from several sources, there are wristbands that children at Faith Life Church currently are wearing, and that have been seen even at the church, at the school church there, that say Team Tom, designating their position as they're on Tom's team. Extraordinarily disturbing that any parents would even allow that. How would that conversation go, I wonder? So these kids are aware of what's going on, and that's just a curious thing to me, what that conversation would look like in the household between the parents and the kids, explaining that Tom is arrested, what he's arrested for, and hey, why don't you wear these bracelets to show your support of Tom, who's been alleged of SA. 3 victims under the age of 13. You guys, that is so disturbing to me. Let me know your thoughts on that. All right, so now let's move over to Art Lucier. There were at least 3 articles that have come out in the last few days. Now, I did see one last night, and then this morning, my friend Salem Webb, he sent over the one, I hadn't even seen it yet, the one that was by Rebecca Hopkins at Julie Roy's at the Roy's Report. Hers was dated yesterday, May 1st. And then there was one that I had already seen, and I think it was from a publication in Canada, and then there was another one. But they all basically have the same information, and this is what it is. As you all know, Art Lucier stepped down from public ministry. I think he announced it around the end of March of 2025, saying that there are some things that have come up in his past that he is having to deal with. And we knew also because Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson, she shared on her channel that she has talked to the lawyer representing some victims. I don't have any information. I don't know what the victims have said. All I know is from the articles. That's all I have. And that's what I'm going by, just to make it clear, just in case you're wondering where I'm getting this information from. Particularly the one that I'm using is the article that was written by Rebecca Hopkins at TRR. So there's 2 civil lawsuits, and there are 2 victims that have come forward, and they are using their real names. One is Jasmine Hall, and the other one's Isla Thompson. So each separate lawsuit, and by the way, they are represented by the same attorney. These are civil lawsuits, just to clarify, because people, I can just imagine right now, people are going to be, oh, I hope he goes to prison or jail. That's not happening here. These are civil lawsuits. There's a difference. So you have the criminal side, you have the civil side. This is the civil side. So what the victims did is they hired an attorney to file a complaint in court, and they are alleging that they were damaged, injured, hurt. They have to assert damages by the person that they're suing, and in this case, they are suing Art Lucier as well as the church and the ministry that Art is associated with. So the allegations are that Art groomed and essayed 2 girls between 10 and 25 years ago. One was an 11-year-old foster child named Jasmine Hall, and it is referenced that one act occurred in a mall parking lot in Kitimat, and that the abuse continued for 8 years. Then with the other individual, Isla Thompson, it reads that in 2001, he befriended her. She was 14 years old at the time, and she was taken on a camping trip, and he would refer to her as my baby girl. The abuse against her reads that it occurred for 14 years. And they both allege in their complaints through their attorney that the abuse by Art against them resulted in damages, to include PTSD, to include, I'll use the word life resignation attempts, you know what I'm talking about. And they also lost faith or trust in religion. They are both suing Art Lucier individually as a person. They're also suing the churches as organizations, Kelowna Harvest Fellowship and Harvest Ministries International. Both ladies, they're both adults now. They are represented by Morgan Chandler, and the suits were filed in the Supreme Court of British Columbia on April 30th, 2025. They allege that the church or the ministry's part is that they were negligent in basically complicit in knowing that these things were going on and allowed the environment to happen so that they would be abused. That is what they are essentially asserting. They are stating that the church did not report to authorities what happened. And it wasn't clear in the article as to the specifics in that regard. I believe it's probably laid out in the complaint. The article mentions the podcast that Tara Jean Stevens did on her podcast called Heaven Bent, and I referenced this in a previous video, and she talks about the allegations against Art Lucier. This was last year, I think, that the podcast came out in 2024. And if you follow Brother John Elving, he started reporting on this, I believe, last year. I went back and I watched a video of his, and it was last year. So he's been aware of this for some time. And then, as you all know, there was an open letter in December of 2024 where numerous people signed this letter, and it does allege grooming and SA by Art Lucier. And we know Salem Webb, according to this article, told TRR that although, well, it was asserted in this report back around the time of the open letter that these individuals were looking for a third-party investigation into these allegations and into the church. And Salem Webb told TRR that he has not heard of any plans that the church or the ministry plans on having a third-party investigation, which is troubling. So if you're watching any of the podcasters on this, we know that a third-party investigation was done, excuse me, in regard to Mike Bickle and IHOP KC. Firefly did the investigation, did the report, and also more recently, Michael Brown. Firefly also did a report there, and there is a lot of contention going on in that regard, and I plan on doing a video at some point later about that. But right now, I will just leave it at that. But there are a lot of issues, and people are reporting on that, so you can check out their podcasts. I know Stephen Powell has done quite a bit. I think he's done a few videos already on the report by Firefly, and then the statement that was made by Michael Brown's board after that, and also Not by Sight News. He did one recently as well too. So where we are here is that we've got the civil lawsuits filed by these two victims. And, you know, we say this a lot when we're talking about these things. There could very well be more victims. And when people are kind of not sure what to do, they're victims and they just don't want to, you know, they're afraid or they're unsure. They're just not in a place where they're going to disclose. This might give them that support to come forward. Now, you could be asking, why isn't Art being charged criminally? I don't know. I don't know if the victims have gone to the police. I have no idea. So my understanding is that there isn't a statute of limitations in regard to SA in Canada, but I'm not sure. That is my understanding, and please, somebody, if you know for sure, you can drop a comment and let me know. I don't know if they plan on going or if that's something in the works. I am not sure. But you can read those articles, they're online. And let me just, again, address the difference between a civil trial and a criminal trial. Right now, those two complaints were filed in civil court. Those are civil complaints. What they're looking for is damages. It's going to be in the form of money. That's just how they can be compensated in civil court. In criminal, you're looking at the person is going to be charged. They're charged with a crime in criminal court. And if they're found guilty, they're going to have a record of that. Could be a misdemeanor, could be a felony. If it's a felony, at least in the States, a lot of rights are taken away. They're not allowed to possess firearms. They're not allowed to vote unless those rights are restored at some point. There are different verdicts. The verdict is the same. They use the term verdict in a criminal trial as well as in a civil, but it's different. In criminal, you'll hear that there could be a guilty verdict or a not guilty verdict. And just by way of reference, when it's a not guilty verdict, that doesn't mean it's a finding of innocence. The jury is never asked to find a defendant innocent. That's not the standard. The standard is just whether the proof offered by the state, the prosecutor, the DA, was sufficient to prove beyond a reasonable doubt the guilt of the defendant that's been charged. If it wasn't, then their only other option is not guilty, and that's it. In a civil case, there will be a verdict, and it will be a verdict, plaintiff verdict or defendant verdict. So in this case, just using it as an example, against Art Lucier and the church and ministry, there could be a plaintiff verdict for actual damages, and I'm sure they are seeking punitives as well. We call them punies. And so the actual damages are just that. It could be past or present or ongoing medical bills, wage loss that they've suffered, relationships that have suffered, along the way, any of those things. For punitive damages, think about it's punishment, P, punitive, P, punishment. It's punishment. So if the jury is asked to address punitive damages, that's something that they want to punish that defendant for doing. But it's not guilt in a civil trial. It's not a finding of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And the standard is different. So that is what I have to share today in regard to an update on Tom Cassie, as well as what's going on with Art Lucier. And I am in the middle of preparing something on Drenda and Gary Cassie. I want to put something together in regard to statements that they've made and on videos, just using their words against them and contrasting that to their stance right now and how they are defending their son, Tom Cassie, who's been charged with 27 counts of felony crimes against children under the age of 13. It's a reality. So I will keep you posted in regard to anything that comes up, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.